7, evening 7, part of a series of lives, storytime lives, where I'm talking about lots of different unschooling things, all of which appear in my forthcoming book, School Isn't For Everyone, which is available to pre-order. I've been sharing different things each evening, so if you haven't had a chance to tune in yet, absolutely go back and have a look at any of the other lives. They're all different. I take a different unschooling subject each one. Each one is linked to a chapter in the book that I've written, and I share some other bits as well about the process of writing or publishing even a book, and other things that are in the book as well. This evening, chapter 7 is really focusing on reading and learning to read. It's usually one of the last things that people are, families, parents, adults, are able to let go of entirely, the idea that children don't need to be explicitly taught to read, that we don't need to carve out time in our daily schedule to make sure that they are reading. I mean, certainly if your child has been in school, you will have been told that reading to them and with them every day is, the key to them being able to read independently. And that would have been coupled with phonics exercises, worksheets, reading logs, trips to the library, a whole host of non-negotiable ways of ensuring children have enough lived experience of reading and being directly taught how to do it. And as we've learnt in previous chapters, unschooling is partly about putting those things to one side, challenging that as the norm, and not relying on curriculums and workbooks and such alike to tell you what to do, or to insist that your child reads every day. And that is usually one of the last things, along with other literacy skills like writing and numeracy skills, particularly the mathematical elements that focus on numbers. That's another subject that takes longer to maybe lean into how children learn those things without direct intervention. So there is a whole chapter in the book about how children learn to read. It, I think, is what do I think it is? Where should we start? I think it's not uncommon for children to actually leave school without carrying strong negative feelings about reading. Lots of children, whether it's because they found it difficult and have found it difficult on an ongoing basis for years, and that can be due to lots of things. It can be due to how they view text on paper. It can be down to how they see the letters on the page. It can be down to how they like auditory processing, and it can be down to understanding, comprehension of what they're reading. So it can be down to kind of developmentally they're not ready as well, and it can be down to them not enjoying it, the relentlessness that they feel of having to read every day and having to write every day, and that not being something that they click with, and having to do that every day impacts how they feel about it. So they come away from school with some really negative feelings about reading. And those who have never been to school, or if they've been deregistered fairly early on, may not show an interest in learning to read until much later than their schooled peers. There is research papers that show that children who are self-directed learn to read anywhere between the age of 3 and 16, and that can be challenging for parents if you've got a 12-13-year-old in your family who is unable to read, when the societal expectation is that they should be able to by now. So I focus predominantly on one interview that I did in this chapter with a lovely lady that I have known a long time, and her 2 children, and she shares their experience. The oldest child initially attended school and came to unschooling with a significant trauma, not just with reading, but with other experiences as well that contributed to that. And the younger of the 2 has always been unschooled, and both are now able to read. I mean, that's what we want to hear at the end of the story, isn't it? So I'll just tell you the end now. And the question that this chapter asks is, what do children really need to be able to learn to read? And it draws on research from Harriet Patterson, who has written a book about her research into how home-educated children learn to read, alongside Alan Thomas, and some research from Peter Gray as well that looks at how learning to read in unschooled families happens. And then that provides this framework for a strategy, I guess, for parents who are unschooling, to say this is actively what we're doing that is going to help my child learn to read. If you've got any questions, it's really nice to see you, by the way. If you've got any questions, just put them in the comments. So that's what this chapter really focuses on. So it tells the story of these 2 children and how their experience of learning to read. It draws on this research, and also on like my observations and work with families and my own experience as well, to talk about what is really needed. And it's not phonics. And if your child isn't reading daily, or you're not able, even if you're not able to read to your child daily because they completely reject the idea, and we're holding, one of the core principles we're holding is autonomy and choice. And so if your child is rejecting that and isn't meaningfully engaged in that process, then that's okay. Your child will learn to read. And talking of principles, so talking about this core principle of autonomy and choice for children, one of the things that I have done throughout the book is pulled out and highlighted unschooling principles. At the end of every chapter, I think I've listed 4 or 5 unschooling principles. One of the things I talk about quite early on in the book is how it's not a list of rules to follow. Like an unschooled approach can't give you a list of rules to follow. So let's talk about the reading. The rule would be, read to them every day. If you don't read to them every day, they're going to fail. So the rule then has to be read to them every day. So we don't have this list of rules about, absolutes about how you must do things to be successfully implementing this way of learning. But what we have is principles. So one of these principles is this idea of autonomy and choice. That's really important. And throughout the book I list lots of other really important principles as well. And one of the reasons that unschooling is kind of based on these principles instead of rules is because it's based on a relational model. It's based on the relationship that you are building with your child and the relationship that you have with your child, and that being the primary focus. So that's a principle in itself, that your relationship comes first, your relationship is the priority, your relationship is more important than anything else. So that comes up several times in the list of principles, because unschooling is based on a relational model. It's not based on outcome. It's not based on the aim that we're trying to get our child to learn to read. It's not even based on the outcome that we are wanting them to learn. Those things are consequences of what we're doing, but they aren't the outcome in terms of that's what we're trying to achieve, and in order to do that we need to follow rules to get there. Being relational also means that we consider all of those that are involved, which includes you, and if you've got other family members, them too, and working together on how to navigate the choices that are being made. So back to that autonomy thing, navigating the choices that are being made so that everybody is happy. So we kind of call that collaboration, connection, collaboration, again based on relationships. And it's not about how can we solve this problem. So say it's a problem that one of your children wants to go out and the other one doesn't want to go out. That's fairly common. It's not about coming up with a solution that's the quickest, the easiest, the most straightforward, or even only serves one and not the other. It's about coming up with solutions that work with for everybody, and sometimes that just means it's not the most straightforward, it's not the easiest, but this is the one where everybody wins. Everybody is happy with the outcome. So the other day, Friday in fact, I took my younger two, who are 13 and 11, to an art session. And when it finished, my 13-year-old said to me, can we go to the shop and buy a snack on the way home? So I said, yes, that's fine, we've got time to do that. We had enough time to pop to the shop and get home, and then we'd have about half an hour at home before we needed to leave again for our next activity. And for us, that's quite a quick turnaround. In fact, we normally only do one kind of set activity on any given day, and the rest is kind of free flow, and we do things if we want to and we feel like it, and in our own time. So we agreed that we would pop to the shop. On the way home, not that far from when we left the art session, we hit traffic, and I hadn't used the sat nav because I knew where I was going. So I kind of popped it in the sat nav, and it said there had been a collision and we were going to be stuck in this traffic for about 7 minutes. And my 13-year-old changed her mind and said, that's not going to give me enough time to get home and have a break in between the two activities. I don't want to go to the shop anymore. Cue my 11-year-old saying she most definitely did want to go to the shop now. She was hungry and she wanted a snack. And we had 7 minutes to discuss it. It was quite a heated discussion because one of them wanted to go and the other one didn't. And it seems that those are complete opposites. And we explored some options, like going to a shop where it would be really quick just to pop in, get what we wanted and pop out. We talked about maybe going to the shop, or maybe I could go to the shop when they were at their next activity, so they could tell me what they wanted and I could pop out and get them what they wanted. My 11-year-old did suggest that we went home first and then went to the shop on the way to our next activity, and really struggled with the concept that didn't change the amount of time that we would have at home. That was quite tricky for her to understand, and she wasn't really understanding how that didn't affect the amount of time that we'd have at home, because we were just swapping over when we were going to the shop. By the time we had got through the traffic, we had decided that we would go home, drop my 13-year-old off at home so she could have a full half an hour, which was still half an hour because of the traffic jam, have half an hour at home, and I would take the 11-year-old to a local shop to go and get her a snack between the two. And that was our collaborative way, our collaborative way of solving that problem, which of course isn't the most straightforward. The most straightforward would have been to not go at all, or to jump into a shop really quickly. But for me, it meant I had to be really flexible and adaptable, and take one home and then go to the shop with the other one, and then come back and take them to their next activity. But these ideas that we carry about how things should be done quickly, we should be what we want is the result that we need, which is in this case would have been the snacks, and it doesn't matter how we get those, it doesn't matter how, like, who's not happy about the solution. We've solved the problem. We've solved the problem because we've got the snack. A relational model considers all the people that are involved and how they feel about those things. It's not it's really based on the ethos of hard work. It's based on, like, how can we be most efficient? How can we get this job done? How can we do this in the easiest way possible and the most straightforward way possible? But ignores the people who are doing it, ignores that some people are ill, you still have to turn up for work. It ignores that some people are distressed about the process or find it really difficult as long as you get the outcome. It values speed and efficiency. And those are things that we're really taught very early on in our schooling. Not explicitly taught, we're not sat down and explicitly taught about those things. But it's kind of like this culture that is created out of colonial systems and the Industrial Revolution that values hard work, speed, efficiency, dedication, outcomes, products at the end of things, and not how it is affecting and being experienced by the people who are doing it, which kind of feeds in to learning to read in schools, because it really is about elevating this skill for the mass production of education, because it makes schooling much easier if children can read, because then you can present more information and children can respond through writing because they have been given those skills. It is less labour intensive than having to read to every single child, or small groups of children. So being able to read and write early on is really about this mass production of education, and in the process of doing that, it damages a much broader array of developmental pathways, which is detrimental to children's perception of self. It's detrimental to their development, and provides this skewed view of life and impacts generally on kind of their general health and well-being, which I keep repeatedly saying, because unschooling has this beautiful way of valuing not just reading and the outcome and the product and the test that children have done. There's this beautiful way of valuing children as human beings holistically, in their entirety, which includes their general health and well-being. And so that's one of the reasons why reading is really key in schools, and why it's introduced really early, and why why in the UK reading at the age of 4 and 5 is kind of the norm. It's an illusion. Most children can't read fluently at the age of 4 and 5. Some children can read a bit. They can read certain words and certain books that have been written to include the words that are being taught. So it's a little bit chicken and egg, because it used to be that we had these, and I'm sure there are some still out there, these beautiful picture books that had fantastic storylines and were illustrated, and the pictures added to the story and the words added to the pictures, and they're crafted in a really beautiful way. And then came this idea that children, a list of words that children should know at a given age, in a given year group. And then publishing companies and some authors took that list of words and then began to write children's books that were appropriate for reception based on the list of reception words, and created these stories. And some of them are better at it than others, and some of them are there purely for the purpose of having appropriate reading books at appropriate levels, which is completely arbitrary when you are unschooling. So maybe if there's one thing that you could take away from this evening, it's not to restrict your child's reading based on reading levels or reading ages. If your child has an interest in a book or a magazine or the newspaper you're reading, or the magazine that you subscribe to, or you go to the library and they want to choose a book that seems to be beyond their reading level, their reading capability, I absolutely wouldn't, on that criteria alone, I wouldn't restrict them from reading it, or getting it out of the library, or you reading it to them. Absolutely. So start with that. But as I said, if your child isn't interested in reading, particularly in books, don't worry either. This chapter covers all of that. So it'll be just the one for you. Tomorrow we're going to be looking at chapter 8, and chapter 8 is what to expect as unschooled children grow, which I think was probably the most challenging one based on the title. Because really, I guess the takeaway, which I'll share with you tomorrow, is expect the unexpected. That's what you can expect. A whole chapter talking about how to expect the unexpected, because as our children are all individuals, so is their pathway. But I don't want to start talking about that now. You'll have to wait till tomorrow evening. Thank you for joining me. Have a good evening.
Are you curious about unschooling and want to know more? Perhaps you're on the edge of starting this adventure, or maybe you've been doing this a while, but you're looking for inspiration. After more than 13 years of unschooling 4 children and over 5 years supporting others on the same path, I have a vast library of resources that I'm happy to share with you for free, whatever stage of your journey you're in. You can check out the link in the description of the podcast, or you can head over to my website at liveplaylearn.org and look for the free resources tab. And there you will find lots of things to inspire you to keep living, learning and playing together. I said that the wrong way round, didn't I? Anyway, it's also a great way to make sure that you don't miss an episode of the podcast, which we will get back to now.